Gene.
Hey, Bill. Here it is. The last Bioactive Nexus show of the year.
No kidding. Isn't this fun, man? We started this in March and it's December and it's been a fun trip all this year.
It has. And you know what's interesting about it is it seems to have gotten progressively better, more fun. You know, I loved it in the beginning, but I love it even more now.
Yeah, me too. And it's, just looking back at all these show episodes, which we're going to go through and do highlights here for everybody today, just so they can, some people join later in the year, so they may not be aware of all of our episodes. So it'd be kind of cool to overview those. And then, the high level in terms of the themes we cover were innovation and research, business relationships in the industry and education, which is huge, which is the whole reason we're doing this show, right? And so that's, we're going to go through that. I guess we'll go through each of the episodes, just give you a couple key highlights for us and our takeaways from this year. And then we're going to tell them about next year, right, Gene?
We are going to tell them about next year. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to our recap and getting this thing started.
So let's start it out. Our first episode, like I said, was back in March.
I remember it. We talked about what we wanted to do. And, and it was funny. You had an idea and I had an idea. So we did both of them. And,
we did. You know what? We didn't tell anyone, for the current audience, how this came about in the first place. We may have done that in the first episode, but just to remind everybody, or maybe people are curious of how Gene and I came together for this. So we were at Supply Side West in 2023. Gene, I had just met Gene in person for the first time. I knew of him, and we had never met in person. That was through Nutriland. Yeah, that was through Nutriland, because Gene's with Nutriland, and I was working with Nutriland when I was at Santa. And so we decided to meet up when we were there. And we were sitting in Mandalay Bay over to the side outside of the show floor or whatever, the hall, and we were having a drink, and we're just saying, and we just started getting to know each other. And then we found out we're kindred spirits.
We did. It was funny because I had gotten, it was a little dinner that we were having with a few people, and I got there a little bit late due to airline stuff. And I got there and I was telling a story about how my taxi driver or Uber driver, whatever it was, we were chatting, and I was mentioning I was into karaoke, and she was into karaoke, and so she sang me a karaoke song, and I sang one for her. And then Bill, to my surprise, was like, "Oh yeah, I'm big time into karaoke as well." And I was like, "Oh, wow!" And then it was like, and then we started talking about our what we do, and it was like we had so many commonalities in our background, in our interests, both professionally and personally. That it just clicked. It has rarely in my life happened that I clicked so instantly with somebody. And then we kept running across each other in that huge show. We just kept running across each other. Yeah. And
that's right. And then finally that one of those afternoons we took a break, and that's when we were just talking about just the industry and getting to know each other a little bit more. And I said, Gene, I said, we're going to work on something together. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But when I do, I'll let you know.
And you called me one day, and you said, I got it. And you said, a podcast. And
that's right.
I agreed that was a great idea. So not only did we collaborate on that, we've collaborated on a number of different projects since then, and are still doing so. But it was a great thing. And I think now we probably are in contact, if not daily, at least several times a week.
Yeah. And let's see. Somebody's trying to make a delivery at my door while I'm on a live podcast.
This has happened to me. This happened to me the other day.
Hold on. Keep talking while I go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The same thing happened to me the other day. Somebody was knocking at my door. It wasn't a podcast. It was a meeting, and I had 6 people, and I was doing a training. And wouldn't you know, some guy comes to my door and he says, "I'm sorry, my car ran out of gas. Do you have a gas can I can borrow?" And I wanted to help the guy. And I said, "Yeah, but I'm in the middle of doing a training right now. It's going to be like 10 minutes before I can help you." And so that was fine. And then suddenly the dogs started barking again. I'm like, what are they barking at this time? Well, apparently the guy was just kind of standing outside the front of my house waiting. And of course, the dogs were going crazy because what's this guy doing here? And finally, I finished and was able to go to go out and help the guys. So yeah, it's the wonders of doing our work from home, Bill.
Well, yeah, I know, and sorry about that, guys, but I get the cleaners are here, so and nobody else is here. The family's out shopping and at the spa, the salon. The ladies are at the salon. Mom and my mother-in-law and my wife and my daughter.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, so leaving me here to talk about science. Okay, no problem. I love it when I could do that.
So speaking of which, let's talk about our first episode.
Yeah.
Your idea was to talk about AI. My idea was to talk about GLP-1, and we started doing that. So on the suggestion, why don't you kind of review a little bit about kind of the highlights on the AI front that we talked about?
It's kind of cool because it's good that this is a topic that was super interesting to me starting at the beginning of this year. And I've been studying AI tech, and it's exploded this year everywhere. It's insane. But it's cool that we're going to start the show with that. Was our first episode. And I'm going to close up at the end with this when we talk about next year, what's coming, because AI factors into that pretty
yes, it does.
Pretty phenomenally, actually. So, but again, it's a tool, guys. Remember, it's the key takeaway of this is it's a really valuable tool. It's going to impact all industries, not just ours. And so we're going to see more and more things come about that. I had some cool intel that I just learned about recently, which is seeing some changes come to our industry. And of course, you can use it for superficial things like that. You can use it to help you with writing post or copy or, that kind of stuff. And did you know you can actually build your own Chat GPT model of your program that you input your information? It can just be a version of you. Did you know you can do that?
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Anyway, so guys, it's not going away. It's going to play into the role of big factor, and fundamentally thinking in a positive way, Gene, it can be used to improve our industry. And that's what I intend to do. So, but you talked about GLP-1, man.
Yeah, I talked about GLP-1 agonists, the Ozempics and semaglutides of the world. Big deal. Everybody's excited about it. And some people not so excited. And, it basically helping reduce appetite. And so many people have lost a lot of weight doing it. But again, it needs to be done responsibly. And in our industry, there's been a lot of interest in it and sort of on two fronts. One was, are there natural GLP-1 stimulants, agonists, that, from a dietary supplement standpoint, that could be used? And also, if you're losing weight with one of these GLP agonists, what are the ramifications of that successful weight loss? What does that do? And you had things like they called Ozempic skin and issues associated with some, lean mass loss and issues associated with, some of the side effects like nausea and what have you. And a lot of companies have been doing products to try to help counter some of those issues. So a lot have been going in there, and we talked about that. We talked about why it's necessary to do a number of things to have long-term successful weight loss and maintenance. So that was a timely topic there.
Yes, and it was actually the supply side this year a big topic on the show floor, and of course it's going to be a huge topic in the coming year. We know.
Do you know one thing I wanted to say? I wanted to jump back to AI for just a second because, you're kind of a very, very sharp AI guy. You know a lot more about that than I do. But one of the things I thought was interesting in our conversation is the fact that you kind of highlighted like sort of what AI is really good for in our business, and including things like, some of the research and the competitive analysis and market stuff. But then you also made, and I agreed with the fact that what it can't really do is replace the expertise and knowledge of scientists and formulators. Right. It can make suggestions, but there's too much it doesn't know. There's too much in the way of nuance that it can't do. So it's not an either or. It's a how it can help us in our work, but it's not replacing us. People fear, and that's not going to happen.
No, and so look, it's like I said, it's a tool. It's a very valuable tool. It elevates your game for sure. It does actually save you time. I mean, that was the promise of computers and when they came on the scene. And they did actually do that. But they also created more work for us. How long you spent building a PowerPoint presentation, Oh, yeah. So hours and hours anyway. So look, all that stuff is getting streamlined, which is awesome, which can look at it in a positive way. We can be more efficient in our jobs and what we do for this industry to really elevate it. So that's what's exciting to me. So, and our second episode, we had two topics again, right? So magnesium and analytical testing, man. So why don't you take magnesium there? Give us
Sure. So
your
for
highlights.
magnesium, look, as I kind of joked at the time, there's so many different forms of magnesium. It's like the magnesium flavor of the month. This
Yeah,
one's better than
yeah,
that one's better than this one, this one's better bioavailability. It's all going around. But one thing we did agree upon is that, look, magnesium is vitally essential. It plays a crucial role in so many aspects of human health and wellness. And you have all these different forms, and a lot of them tout the fact that they have higher bioavailability. What they don't tout often is the fact that they also have very low elemental potency, some of them. So if you say, my bioavailability is X times greater than this other magnesium salt, but it's like, yeah, but you're 6% magnesium. So even if it's greater, you still have to take huge amounts to get where you want to go and what you want to be. So we talked about that and, the different forms and how some of them are good for specific things. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to get a lot of magnesium, some of these sexy forms may not always be the best choices, but some of them are really good choices for other things like, cognitive function or whatever. So we kind of went into that and talked about even forms that are interesting, but, may have higher levels of some contaminants or heavy metals. So it was a really good show to cover a lot of these different areas. And then, of course, you start talking about analytical testing, which was something we've both dealt with quite a bit. So why don't you go into that a bit?
Yeah. So, and I think the key takeaway for me on that was that I outlined the 12 steps of analytical success. So, and I'd forgotten that I'd done that. That's actually a good guide. So you guys might want to go back and watch that episode. Anyway, and then we did another episode later on botanical identity testing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But analytical testing is certainly a tool for our industry and very important, and for a lot of reasons to not only identify contaminants, but also making sure the C of A's match what the suppliers do in terms of bioactive. They have the components in it that they say they have in it, that kind of thing. So analytical testing's huge, but I'll save the rest of that for our overview on that. Episode 3.
One topic, because this was such a big area, something both of us have interest in for and have done a lot with, and that was, of course, the microbiome, or as we called the show, the Microbiome Revolution. So much to talk about in that regard. All kinds of takeaways. And we covered a lot. We covered about the fact that, probiotics, what they were. We talked about prebiotics, what they were. We talked about postbiotics, what they were, and all how these different biotics have an impact on, again, human health and wellness, how they can be used, how they do so many different things, and talking to people about how to be aware of the different forms, the different strains, the dosage formats, so much about it. I mean, the science on this is amazing, and it's just growing at an exponential rate.
Exactly. If you remember, I used to, as the global R&D lead for Sanofi, I was also their biotics lead. So I was very active in sourcing and identifying key strains around the world from different suppliers. And also our team did a lot in terms of looking at the research and stuff. So all the research that's coming is huge. And this is definitely an area for our industry, for product innovation, that's going to be really important to pay attention to. You see more and more talk about it in the newsletters, trade newsletters, that sort of thing. And we're going to see more and more about that. Which, by the way, I am doing a column for Nutrition Industry Executive next year.
Yes, you are.
That's right. And it ties into this because it's about functional foods, but it's tied to microbiome and all of that. So there's going to be 5 articles throughout the year. The first one will come out in January. I just finished writing that for the folks at VRM Media. So stay tuned for that. I'll announce that on LinkedIn when it happens.
Cool. So our next show was also very interesting, and something, again, that both you and I have had a lot of experience with, and that is how to choose the right CDMO, or contract development and manufacturing organization.
Exactly.
I mean, over the decades I've been in the business, I've dealt with so many of these companies, and man, is there a huge difference in the quality and level of professionalism between one and another. It's just enormous. And I thought what was particularly important in our show is that we gave our listeners some really good guides on how to go about choosing a good CDMO.
We did.
I thought that was particularly valuable. Things to look for, things to measure them against, and looking at their certifications and what they do, and questions to ask about packaging and testing and supply chain, and just a whole lot of different things that was vital. And I thought that was a particularly valuable show for even if you especially if you're new to the supplement industry to understand, but even if you've been around for a while, I thought we gave some really good pointers that would help somebody in assessing new CDMOs.
Absolutely. And we must have done a good job at that, Gene, because I looked at our analytics from Spotify, which we distribute the podcast on our YouTube channel, of course, the website. But then it goes out to Spotify, which is really big on video podcasting now. Google Podcasts went away in July. Everything is moving to video podcasts. If you were doing audio podcasts before, that's going to become a thing of the past. But anyway, our analytics on Spotify said that this was our 154% over any other episode, most viewed episode. So
sure.
So it was certainly some valuable content, and I like the fact that we gave a really good stepwise guide for folks to help and work, especially if you're new to the industry. It's a good starting point in terms of a guide of how to select the CDMO, do your due diligence, and make sure you can ask all the right questions, because some of these guys are not all above board. They don't all follow GMPs really well, and sometimes the quality is not quite there. So that's where you have to dig in. You've got to do your own due diligence. That's my takeaway for that. You can't rely on, even if they're NSF certified or USP certified, whatever, you still owe it to yourself if you're going to work with them to do your own due diligence, man.
Makes sense. So our next one was interesting to me because as long as I've been in this industry, the 45 years, I had never gone to Vita Foods in Europe. And for the first time, I went to Vita Foods Europe, Geneva. It was quite a trip, really, really interesting. And so I brought back some of the highlights of things that I saw there. And you also had a lot to contribute towards that as we were discussing some of those things. Mm-hmm. And so, there were interesting things like, omega-11s, things like psychobiotics, just so, excipients, things like certain kinds of silica that can make fat-soluble substances more water-soluble, just a whole lot of interesting aspects of things that I saw there. And it was interesting that one of the things I saw there was the company that had all the sucrosomial forms of minerals.
Right. I knew them.
That was one of the things that you and I had discussed in our magnesium episode of sucrosomial magnesium, which we both agreed was a pretty cool form for different reasons. And so I got to talk to them and get an understanding. So it was a great place to go and to visit. I'm looking forward to going back in 2025. This time, not in Geneva, but in Barcelona. So, which I understand has some great restaurants. So
I know it does. And I actually would like to go to that one in May. I don't know if I can do that. It depends on the new venture that we're launching this year, because that's going to be my primary focus. So we'll see. But the other thing for Gene, while he was there, he did a recap on that. But then was building on our microbiome show, which we're going to do more episodes of that, guys, in the coming year. But psychobiotics in that term, really fascinating. There was a lot of cool strains that really were just specific for actually mental wellness sort of targets. So cognitive, sleep, stress, these sorts of things. These are what we would call the psychobiotics, mood,
that's right.
That sort of thing. So pay attention to psychobiotics, folks. And what I found was interesting as I was mapping out the different strains around the world that are available for commercially, and then reading all the research and digging into that. What I found is that there are certain strains, and now you may have, it's good because you may have a genus species of a particular strain, like Lactobacillus strain or something like that, a certain species of that, like Lactobacillus acidophilus, for example.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it's just an example. But you could have a postbiotic of that, or you could have Lactobacillus brevis, for example, have a postbiotic that has indications for sleep, and I've seen clinical data for that. So, there's you're going to have different profiles in terms of activity, and it really just came down to one thing, Gene. Where were people focusing their research on the strains? Because I think there's more indications or targets that these strains will hit, and we're going to see that as more and more research is done in the coming future here on that one. So then, episodes 6 and 7 were kind of go together because we decided we wanted to do women's health and men's health, right? We wanted to target that. So first we took the role of women's health and looked at that.
Yeah, that was particularly interested in me in graduate school. I did a lot on women's health. There was a lot of focus on that. And so things you might expect, pregnancy, menstrual related issues, menopause and so forth, but even general health issues like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. What are some of the differences in the male versus female population? And so we went through that. We discussed some of those different concern areas. And then we discussed a lot of interesting botanicals and nutrients, different nutraceuticals that help to address some of these things. So it was, to my mind, almost like a little mini presentation of, if you were going to formulate a product for these areas, what are some of the areas and what are some of the nutraceuticals that you would use in there? And we highlighted some of those things in a meaningful way. And once again, you and I talked about the microbiome and probiotics in women's health. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that we covered in there that I thought was particularly critical.
And the same with men's health. That was our next episode there. And again, men and women have different health needs, that sort of thing. And as more and more research is done in the coming year and so on, we're going to see more specialization, I would say, for both men and women's health, different areas, which are maybe lacking in a little bit of research, like for men's health, anything that has to do with libido, that sort of thing. And there's already been some buzz about this, both for men and women, of products that affect libido. So, there's traditional things like, Yohimbe and, et cetera.
There's a lot. One of the things that I found interesting, I don't remember if I mentioned this at the time or not, I think I might have, is that so many years ago, decades ago, I worked for a company that, although products for men's sexual health were very common, even decades ago,
but not for women.
For women.
No.
We came out with, I think, the first one for women, and it didn't sell. Not because it wasn't effective, but women wouldn't buy it in the first instance.
Right.
It was like they didn't want to be touching that, looking at that. It's changed now. Now women are not feeling like it's a negative reflection on them or whatever the reasons were, and they're able to actually use some of these things. So I'm seeing more and more now products for women's health that include women's sexual health. And I think that's great.
Yeah. And that led us to the next episode, Gene, which was about supplements and diet myths. And that was fun because we went through, you can share your story, I know, because you've lost a lot of weight. Actually, I've lost quite a bit of weight since September, but I'll talk about that too. But what are we doing actually? And we talked a lot about these different programs out there, right?
Right. We also talked about the diets, popular diets in general, things like Mediterranean diet, keto diet, vegan diets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, intermittent fasting, all of these things. So we kind of reviewed some of that data, what that was all about. Again, gut microbiome came into the discussion. And we talked about the importance that the important role that supplements can play, and how the use of the right ones can help different aspects of weight loss and weight maintenance, and different aspects of that, things like appetite versus metabolism and so forth. So I thought it was a great show from that perspective.
Well, and, the other important part of this is that, one of the pushbacks against, I've heard from some of the doctors, medical industry, others, nutritionists, dietitians say you don't need to take supplements, you get everything from the diet.
Not so much.
Yeah. Not so much anymore.
And so I had, I think I made the point there that if you look at data from our own U.S. Department of Agriculture, you find that only 10% of Americans are eating a good diet, meaning 90% are not. And of those, then you say, okay, of those, do you still get people, of those 10%, are they getting all the nutrients that they need? Well, again, if you look at data from our USDA, it indicated that they were, in fact, not. There was several nutrients they weren't getting sufficient amounts of. So even if you followed all of those recommendations, the chance that you're going to meet all the dietary requirements, the nutrient requirements, are extremely low. And a nutrition insurance policy in the form of multivitamins, some of those things make a big difference.
That's right. And so anyway, check that out, guys. Some good info and tell, and that's our experience. And Actually, my previous company, I actually ran clinical studies, weight loss studies, weight management, weight maintenance studies, that sort of thing, and with different products and ingredients. So what works for me, okay, is I've been doing intermittent fasting for years now, and either a 14-10 or 16-8 program, which means 14 hours of fast, 10 hours of eating, and again, it doesn't mean in your hour eating period, you go hog wild and you go to eat every meal at McDonald's, right? I mean, it's not, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way either. So you need to have, it's like I say all the time, the Holy Trinity. You gotta eat right, you gotta exercise, and supplements work to help with that for sure. And you gotta have a spiritual practice. So all of those three are the key. But and actually, Gene, I just put on the scale this week since I've started these. Remember, I was doing the push-up challenge for supply side this year.
I remember that.
Yeah, heavy training into that, and actually, I lost a few pounds there in preparation the supply side, and now I've lost a total of 15 pounds.
Awesome.
And so intermittent fasting. I'm actually doing keto right now, and it's actually when you get older, certain things don't work for your body anymore. So bread, I love bread, but if I eat bread, I go like this,
It's true. It's true. Things change. For me, I've done kind of a modified paleo type of sort of a hybrid between keto and paleo sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't eliminate starches, but I vastly reduce them. And being that I'm gluten intolerant anyway, there's a lot of stuff I can't have in any case. So that works.
Right.
And, as you know, I've lost over 50 pounds over a period of about a year. Yeah. And recently I saw that I went down another inch on my waist. So I'm down 7 inches now.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You were looking good at supply side, man. For
sure.
So
are you. And I was impressed that at the push-up challenge, in your age range, you did the most of anybody. So that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, us baby boomers can still kick it.
Yes, we can.
In many ways. Okay, so let's move through this. So Beauty from Within was our next episode.
Beauty from Within.
Yes, that was fun.
Yeah, Beauty from Within was a really important one. Look, in our industry, it's a big area, and the company the company I used to work for, we had whole lines of products that were just dedicated to Beauty from Within. And I formulated so many products for hair and skin and nails. I can't even remember how many I did.
Right.
And so it was really a very interesting area to discuss that and to cover some of the different nutraceuticals that had very specific effects in these different areas. What was real, what wasn't real. Things like everybody says, oh yeah, biotin is the great hair nutrient. Well, the fact is, it's not. You don't see published clinical trials on biotin for hair. You see, if you're deficient in biotin, you'll have hair loss. If you have an adequate amount of biotin, taking more won't make you grow more hair or have better quality hair. There's no data to support that. There's plenty of other nutraceuticals that will. That's just one of many examples. We talked about collagen. We talked about so many different things. And I thought it was great from that standpoint. And it's an area that isn't going to go away because you know what? Everybody wants to look their best. They want good looking skin, hair, nails. So,
Well, and it goes hand in hand with the previous episode we just talked about, and it's about healthy lifestyle and all that. And we're in the healthy lifestyle business. Hey, if you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk, man. And you'll feel so much better if you do that. It's not just about it's healthy lifespan. Used to be called anti-aging. Nobody says that anymore. Now it's healthy aging, but it's a healthy lifespan. So who wants to be 90 years old or 85 years old and not have the same quality of life that you enjoy the years before that, right? You don't want to be. What purpose is that? So again, it takes years. It's been a lifetime commitment for me personally. So
likewise.
Again,
it's not all about the years in your life. It's about the life in your years.
There you go. And you got to have fun with your life, man.
That's right.
Well, which leads us to episode 10, which I don't know if this is fun for the industry, but which was on mandatory product listing. Holy cow.
That was a funny segue. So, mandatory product testing. A lot of debate on that. A lot of debate.
Well, and I say that not in jest, but really, I am tired of seeing the argument back and forth.
So much argument about it. And, and the short version was that most of the industry trade organizations, while conceptually were not opposed to it, the way that it was being positioned and how it was being done, there was objections to. And so it was a back and forth. Should we do it? Shouldn't we
Yeah.
do it? And it wasn't an easy thing. You and I both gave our
Yeah.
impressions on that, where it sort of the industry position that, yeah, look, it could be a good thing, but it has to be set up correctly, and it doesn't look like it's quite there yet. So,
Yeah.
well,
we'll see what happens. That's going to continue to be a topic, and it looks like, just from all indications, especially Kara Welch was speaking at Supply Side this year, that they are going to move ahead with some form of mandatory product listing. They'll put a guidance out to industry, or for comments or something like that if they do that, and it'll go back and forth. But at the end of the day, we need to all get on the same page. And
we do.
I have to, I'm in the industry, but I also recognize the agency's challenges as well. So, and if we're going to solve this, the reason we're 50-50 split on this is because we're not thinking proactively about for the good of the whole industry and what makes sense. So it's about doing the right thing, and it is coming together. You need to be able to do that. You need to be able to recognize the other person's views and respect that, and be able to do that. So this was one of my predictions for 2025. I did in a separate post and a video, which was that the trade associations were going to come together and deal with all these issues in a proactive way. And you know what? I proposed the wild concept, Gene, of why don't we have just one trade association for the industry? Why do we have 5 of them or more? It doesn't really make sense. Okay, it's a historical thing and the way they happen, but let's have one unified voice from our industry. Think of the power of that. Anyway, that's my...
It would. And of course, the whole issue of mandatory product testing could become moot if just somehow magically something came along to mitigate the need for that. But maybe more on that later.
Yes, I know what you're teasing at, man. Okay. Then we got to our episode 11. That was near and dear to our hearts. Okay. And that was about neurodivergence. Okay.
So both of us have kids that are neurodivergent. In my case, my son is on the autism spectrum, and has been all of his life. He's 25 now. He's pretty high functioning, but there's distinct elements to that. And likewise, your daughter also is neurodivergent. And so, what I thought was really interesting is that we didn't just talk about it. We invited our kids on to talk about what their experiences were in neurodivergence.
Yeah.
Then we talked about some of the things that could be done, and like what are some of the nutrients, what are some of the nutraceutical approach to helping to support these kind of situations. Exactly. And so to me, it was a very meaningful episode. And how did you feel about it?
Well, same thing. My daughter is she's 14 and she's a special needs child. She's a neurodivergent, different condition for her. She has a birth defect, it's cerebellar hypoplasia, but it has an impact in learning and motor skills, all these other things like that. And it's funny because she developed differently. Where I'll just give you a simple example. When she holds a taco or a burger, she holds it upside down. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's just, maybe it's her motor skills trying to adapt to try and eat it that way. She has some quirky things about her or whatever, which are, make who she is. But again, I've already started her in some of the supplement things that because I'm an expert in this. So I know kind of what can help. Those certain nutrients can help with her condition. There really isn't any research. There's no clinical research to speak of about this. Maybe more with ADD and autism, I think.
There is more with that for sure.
Yeah, but not for her condition so much. But anyway, that's why we talked about that. That may be of interest to you, our viewers, if you have neurodivergence.
Yeah, check out episode 11 if you want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, episode 12 was, again, something that was, I thought, fascinating. And we're talking about an area that you've had a lot of experience in, and that was the botanical identity testing, something that I've certainly dealt with on one end of the spectrum, but you've had a larger one. You've had an interesting background in that, which we discussed. We discussed our experiences. Why don't you recap kind of what your background is in that?
Well, first I wrote I did a blog post or an article on my netprologics.com website. You can go check that out on botanical identity testing. And again, I've dealt with this over the years, and I gave some case studies of examples in my career going way back to the late 90s and then most recently to 2023. So, this is still, at the end of the day, you still have to do testing. Now, the technology has gotten more sophisticated. You can do it faster, more efficiently, more reference standards to do testing of botanicals, that kind of stuff. But still, there's still some gaps here because you can't just take any sample of a product from a supplier and send it to any lab and expect to get positive results. Let's say you're trying to verify the C of A that they sent you. Well, the reason for that is, I think probably one of the biggest take homes is that you have to understand and ask the right questions of what are they using in terms of methods to test the botanicals. Right now, there's some experienced labs with botanicals that know how to do this, and even some other big labs don't really have the botanical testing expertise. And I've seen that firsthand. So again, this is a really instructive overview and highlight of all the latest techniques, and even the future ones that are like metabolomics and these other things that are playing in a role. And I think that finally, the last take-home message on this is there's no one-size-fits-all solution here. You have to really evaluate. It depends on what the botanical is in terms of the method it's available or not, or how do you do your identity testing there. So anyway, go back to look at that, guys, and check it out.
Yeah, it was really good, and we had a lot of things that I thought were interesting. We discussed even issues like DNA barcoding, which had come up again recently. So there was so much that we covered in that I think that anybody who has any interest in this topic at all would do well to review that episode. And then the next one was another one of those kind of popular catchphrase areas, which was biohacking. And we talked about biohacking trends, which
demystifying
biohacking. And I thought it was quite interesting. We covered a range of things in here.
We did.
And including AI, genetic editing, wearable devices, and of course, the role that nutraceuticals can play in impacting our cells, the expression of our DNA, doing things that can really impact us in a very profound way to improve our health. So I thought it was a particularly interesting area. I had previously done a lot of research in nutrigenomics and the impact of individual nutrients on genetic expression. And so it was really cool to be able to do an episode like this where we were able to cover some of these things. I thought we had a lot to share.
Yeah, and people put a term around it, biohacking, but it's a lot of things we already knew, like in terms of supplements, whatever. And, for me, I actually, this year, right around the same time, I ended up doing my first polar plunges, actually, which were intense. It was like a pretty cold ice bath. You dip in there for about 10 minutes, and it really does.
My friend, are a little more adventurous than I. I've seen that before. I thought, that looks interesting. I don't want to try it, but it looks interesting. You're more like, that looks interesting. I think I'll try it. And so, I admire that in you, Bill.
well, that's how I roll, man. I'm a Renaissance man. I do.
Indeed.
I do go do that. And then that kind of led us up to the fall here, and a really fun episode. It was our first in the series of the Bioactive Breakdown.
Bioactive Breakdown. One of the things that you and I had discussed was, hey, do we want to have some guests that can join our episodes from time to time to do a deeper dive into one particular topic? And our first one was, omega-3, or just omegas, really, omega fatty acids. And so we did. We had some really interesting guests that came on, and we were able to cover omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-7s. We were able to look at it from the standpoint of fish materials, krill materials, different kinds of materials, with experts in each of these areas giving us some really excellent information, asking some really great questions, and some really interesting back and forth between our guests. I thought it was brilliant. I loved how that thing went, and it made me want to just do more of them because I thought it was so great to have these different experts joining us to help educate everybody about these areas.
And the whole reason we wanted to do that, folks, is that we were doing these topics on each episode, just Gene and I. But we always had intended to bring other guests on. We were trying to think of a way to do that. We want to do something different. And so the idea was to pick a topic that we can do a deep dive on the science. So that's where we basically, from the Bioactive Nexus, which is the coming together of something, the bioactive breakdown is to take that topic and break it down and do a deep dive on that subject, whether it's the science or we did another one in the Science Revolution we'll talk about in a minute. So again, stay tuned for more of those in the coming year. And it was fun to have our guest panelists on there. We had 3 for that one and 4 for the next one that we did. Lots of fun there, guys. So stay tuned for that. That one was on omegas, as Gene pointed out. So go back and take a look at that.
And then, of course, our next one that was exciting, we're at Supply Side West, and we did the Bioactive Nexus live from Supply Side West in the press room. And we had so many amazing guests that joined us. David Brown, Dr. Jacqueline Jacques, Dr. Jeff Chen, Tom Arts, Michael Antonovich. I always pronounce his name wrong. Antonovich.
There we go.
Pelin, Daniel Lynn. It was so many interesting guests giving us their perspectives on supply side, what was interesting or cool that they saw there, as well as what was interesting and cool with their own companies and organizations. And what I really thought was fascinating, Bill, was you didn't get a repeat. I mean, we didn't get everybody saying the same thing. I mean, if it had been 2019, everybody would have said, well, CBD, CBD, CBD. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was complete. I mean, it was just all over the place with interesting perspectives, some of which you didn't expect at all. Like when Danielle Lynn talked about what was interesting to her were relationships and the impact that had on the business. So, I mean, it was so fascinating, the different things that were discussed.
Yeah. And I kind of love that. There were some good moments there. But we did such a good job with the guests that Gene and I forgot to give our perspectives at the show. So we ran out of time. Out of time. So we did our debrief of Supply Side West in the next episode.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about the things that, that we saw. And not surprisingly, it included things like, peptides, GLP-1, regulatory stuff, postbiotics, functional beverages being on the rise, younger consumers being more data-driven, a lot of different areas that were interesting to us. And I'm really kind of glad now that we didn't give our impressions, because it allowed our guests to really talk about stuff and we were able to focus on them. And then we came back and gave our own, which I thought was great.
Yeah. It was great. It was great. And then that led us up to our second bioactive breakdown on the science revolution. Yes.
And so to me, one of the things that both you and I have had a fair amount of experience in, Bill, is being involved in clinical studies on either finished products or raw materials, and how so many companies aren't doing that. And it seemed to us that, what if companies are interested in doing it? Maybe they haven't done it before. Where do they start? Where do they go? So we had 4 really interesting representatives of CROs, clinical research organizations, come on, talk about different models, different ways of doing it. We asked them all kind of the same questions, and they were able to summarize and explain the kinds of things that they had to offer, different ways of doing it. And it was fantastic. What a great introduction to, science revolution, how to use clinical research to validate your products and the benefits that you could reap from such a thing. So I thought that was wonderful. And I certainly want to do more of those.
Definitely. And look, we're all about the science here, folks. Here's what I want to say about that episode of the Science Revolution. It was a fun show. We had a great group of panelists, like Gene said, the four folks, and some new to the industry. Some have been in it a long time, and somewhere in between. So great perspectives. What's exciting to me, which is going to lead in our next topic, that was the 17 episodes we did. And I want to give my highlight for the year. And then, Gene, if you can do the same thing. But my biggest highlight for all the episodes we did, I found the most engaging or the most fascinating or whatever for me, was the Science Revolution episode. Because I'm going to be a part of that revolution in the coming year, which we'll talk about in a minute in the future, what's coming. But it's kind of cool because, like I said in that show, I was doing clinical research for our industry and major product brands. but nobody was really wanting to engage in the clinical research. And the typical response was, well, I don't have to do that. I
Right.
don't need to do that. I can just make this claim. So they didn't really care about making the supportive science they needed. And this is 14 years ago. Well, that's going to change in the coming dynamics it's already starting to change
It
where
is.
if you aren't doing the science, you can't support your claims, your days are numbered. You got a target on your back. And the days of the bad actors they got a target on their back as well. So that's the
Yeah.
biggest highlight for me for the year, Gene, in terms of that.
Well, Bill, I guess I shouldn't be too terribly surprised given our backgrounds and common interests that for me, that was also the big highlight. That was the science revolution. That whole discussion of clinical research was so exciting to me and so germane to our industry and everything that's happening and where we're going.
Absolutely.
To me, that was the big difference. And I'm excited to be working with a company where we've got 4 more clinical studies in process. Plus, we've got budgeted for another 5 clinical studies next year. I'm so jazzed. I'm so happy to be involved in that and to see what's happening in our industry and to be lucky enough to work with some great CROs that are doing some wonderful stuff. Yeah. That's the big thing for me as well, Bill.
Cool. Well, I think we're aligned, and that sets us up for looking ahead for next year, I think, because so what do we got coming here? So foremost, I'd say is that you're going to see more of the Bioactive Breakdown series, okay, where we do deep dive on a subject. And that's super exciting. And again, whether it's cutting edge research or new ingredients, whatever's hitting the waves there, GLP-1, like we said, is not going away. But we'll do more deeper dives on with the Bioactive Breakdown. And
I think we're
trends. Yeah.
I think, we every once in a while we've been doing little teasers for things coming up. I think we'll be doing more of those particularly for live events, new guest experts that we're going to bring in, and hopefully more opportunities for audience engagement, which I think is pretty exciting. Maybe even something with the supply side. Who knows?
Right,
so
exactly. And again, so the future of the industry is pretty amazing. I think that in terms of our vision for that, we're still engaged in it. So this is why we're doing the podcast, and we want to continue to educate and elevate the credibility of this industry and talk about the science and really bring it out. And what are the trends? That's to watch. So again, we already talked about it, AI-driven research, personalized nutrition, if you want to call it that, and expanding scientific evidence. These things are going to continue to grow in the future anyway. So stay tuned for this year. One more thing, Gene, we should mention that's coming in 2025 is our book.
Our book is coming out. That's right. Yeah. And this is going to be a book that is going to cover the science on 120 different or more different nutraceuticals, where we're going to cover that. We're going to explain that. It's going to be something that could be either a reference book for somebody who wants to look up a nutraceutical, see what the real research is, what are the doses that have worked, how can that be applied either in the creation of a product or just for your own personal edification. So it could be used for both industry and as well as individuals. It could be used as a whole book just to learn about all these things, as well as a reference for looking up individual ones. I think it's going to have some wonderful applications. And the nice thing about it is our plans happen to be, this is the first edition. That every couple of years or so, we'll have a new edition that'll expand and give you new nutraceuticals, give you updated information about old nutraceuticals. So it's always going to be fresh. It's always going to be new. And it's something that we plan to have available in a digital form. So it'll be really easy to get a hold of as well.
Exactly. And then the final thing I'll say, what's super exciting that's happening in 2025 will be the launch of Nutriselect.ai.
That'll be a game changer for industry, Bill.
Definitely a game changer for the industry. It's been my little Manhattan project all year. And again, it's leveraging AI, but wait till you see what it does. So I'll just give you a little teaser here. We all know this that are in the industry, but we're just talking the U.S. alone here. Okay. So the U.S. is a $68.2 billion industry, right? And the consumers have an overwhelming choice of products. There's like 100,000 products on the market. And I'd say probably 60 to 70%, if not more, mislead consumers. They lack scientific support or fail to deliver on the promised health benefits. That's a little, and what kind of gave me the vision of wanting to do something about this is that I was meditating about this and thinking, Gene, what am I going to do? Next, I'm going to take a new product to market. I've done dozens of products to market like you. And I said, well, I could do that and that'd be cool. But what's the biggest problem I could solve for our industry? And it came to me because this is something that consumers have come up to me for years and said, hey, Dr. Bell, what do I take for this? I'm sure you've had the same experience. And we have a certain spectrum of knowledge as subject matter experts, but we don't know everything out there. And the way things have advanced and the low barrier of entry for people to take products into this industry makes it very, very difficult to find the products that actually are based on science, actually have science, and are actually going to work for you. So again, what is Nutriselect.ai? It's an AI-powered app that guides dietary supplement choices with its robust, science-driven rating system to help consumers make safe, effective, and informed decisions.
And
so
let me give an example of how it might be used. So say, I'm looking for something to improve cognitive support. Well, the sky's the limit. How many products are out there? How many of them are actually have any science to support them? So this app, somebody could put in a few pieces of information, hit the button, and boom, it'll come up and it'll tell you products that are real, products that actually have research behind them. Not looking at all these wild claims that are unsubstantiated. It's going to bypass the bull and go right to the science. And as a result, somebody can actually find something that actually works, that the science actually exists on, and talk about the bad players. They're not going to be there because they don't have the science to support it. Exactly. It's only going to be the ones that have the science, and even ones that are similar. It's going to break that down in a way where it'll have a rating system and you'll really know. And that, I think, will revolutionize the entire industry.
And guys, I didn't take this lightly because, of course, the first person I thought of to help me in this as a big advisor was Gene himself here. And who will be a doctor after the first of the year, Dr. Botanical Medicine. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So anyway, stay tuned. You'll be seeing a lot of the teasers on this as we go through the year in different phases of that. And well, I wish I could tell you everything that's actually going on. It's a very busy holiday season.
It is indeed.
And we've already developed a prototype, guys, and I've already been pitching it to people. We're raising capital right now. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be fun. Anyway, that's it for our show. For the year, the last one for the year, I think I want to wish everyone a happy holidays with your family and friends. And
indeed, I'd like to do the same. Wish everybody happy holidays. And then, from both Bill and I, we are just so grateful for all of you that have been supporting us, watching our podcast, and giving us positive feedback about the things you're learning and how you enjoy that as well. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for that. And again, other thing in the future I forgot to mention for us is we'll have a bigger presence at Supply Side next year, Supply Side West in October. So stay tuned for news on that as it develops. But already been talking to the folks at Informa Markets and what we want to do. Anyway, you're going to see a much bigger Bioactive Nexus in the coming year. Again, thanks everybody for supporting us, following us. Please share our website or LinkedIn page, everything with everyone. Our goal for Gene and I is not really to have this tailored just for our industry, but we really want to take it out to the mainstream and more consumers because that's where it's going to happen. And again, that marries up very nicely with Nutriselect.ai. So probably watch the podcast because this is where I'm going to release information as we go through launch of that as well.
So folks, have a happy and merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Yule, whatever you celebrate. Enjoy it. Enjoy the time with your family. And we'll see you again in the new year.
And, Gene, we should have closed with a song here.
Oh, we should have.
I didn't think about it ahead of time.
Maybe we'll open the new year with a song.
Yeah, okay. Well, have a blue Christmas without you. All right. I'll be so blue dreaming about you.
Oh, no, we can't get started now.
Okay. Sorry, guys. We're going to have to go sing some karaoke now, which is probably what we're going to do in the holidays. So everyone take care. Have a good one. We'll see you in the next one when we come back in the new year.